Welcome to the Cherson Military Academy. I'm Colonel Markus Reisner. I'm the head of the Research and Development Department of the Academy. Today we will have a look at the Ukrainian offensives in Cherson and Charkiv. As usual, we would like to use 4 elements for the analysis. It's terrain, force, time and information. And it covers the situation in Cherson and in Charkiv. Let's start with the offensive in Cherson and terrain. As you know, the Ukrainian side was able to assemble significant forces on the west bank of the Dnieper River. The situation there was that Russia, already in the beginning of the conflict, was able to capture the west bank of the river Dnieper. In the beginning of the preparation, the Ukrainian side tried to isolate those elements by destroying 3 vital bridges over the Dnieper. 2 near Cherson and 1 further to the east, as you can see here when you look at the destroyed bridges. Those elements assembled to the west of the bridgehead were formed in a way that the plan was to do some fixing attacks in the north and in the south, and then try to penetrate in between those Russian elements and form 2 cauldrons. When we have a look at the force, then we can see that the units which were used by the Ukrainian sides mainly were assembled by using Western military equipment. So we have seen T-72s from Czech Republic and Poland, or even BMP infantry fighting vehicles. On the other side, we also saw self-propelled howitzers of the type of Grab, and of course the HIMARS system. The HIMARS system was vital to destroy the bridges. Very important to understand is that the Ukrainian side made use of high mobile units based on so-called technicals, which gave them the possibility to attack very fast into the terrain. When we look in detail at the HIMARS system, then we can see that the 16 systems which is said are delivered to Ukraine had a significant impact, because we know that for the moment over 400 targets were destroyed all over the Russian occupied territory. Maybe even more of those systems were delivered. In our next short video you can see the damage inflicted by the use of an American HIMARS system by the Ukrainian side.
Ось так виглядає робота хаймерсів. Ось тігри, бетери, бехи.
Let us look at time. The problem of the Ukrainian side was that the terrain near Cherson is very open and flat. So it was very difficult for them to form the assembly areas prior to the attack. The Russians were able to conduct reconnaissance and identify the Ukrainian assembly areas, which were then attacked by artillery, like you can see here in this little picture, where you can see the impacts along the hedge line in the picture. Also in the beginning, when the Ukrainian forces attacked the Russian side, they were attacked by Russian artillery systems, which inflicted heavy losses on the Ukrainian side. The result was that the 2 fixing attacks in the north and in the south only were able to gain a small foothold into the Russian bridgehead. The central attack in the middle also was troubled by the problem of Russian artillery fire. So the situation was like this, that in the next days after the beginning, the problem was that the Russians effectively counterattacked and inflicted high losses in key areas, like as we can see here in this video, a pontoon bridge which was formed by the Ukrainian side over the Ingolets River to bring more reinforcements to the other side. Now let us have a look on the other offensive in Charkiv. Also here we'll have a look on terrain first. The situation in the east was dominated by the ongoing battles in Donbass. The Russian side tried to attack further direction west. It's even said that the plan was, by using a new element, the so-called 3rd Army Corps, to attack from the north, in the area of Isium, direction south, to form a huge cauldron over the Ukrainian forces. What we know is that in the weeks prior to the offensive, significant elements of the Ukrainian side were brought in the area of Charkiv. Also here we saw Ukrainian reserve staged for a possible attack direction east in direction of the Oskol River. The staging of the Ukrainian forces was kept in strict secrecy. It was done under strict operational security measures. Let us look at the force. Also here we can see that the equipment used was mainly coming from the west. So we had T-72 tanks from Czech Republic and Poland. We also had M113s from the US, or the German Panzerhaubitze 2000, or even the MLRS system, which is a system like the HIMARS system. But also here again we have to stress that they were using a lot high mobile units, like we can see here, equipped with the Bushmaster. To give you an idea about the morale of the Ukrainian troops, we would like to show you the next video, which was made just immediately before the attack and which shows the Ukrainian side forming up and singing the national anthem. Also here we have to have a look at the weapon systems which were used. It's interesting to see that there are significant evidence that Ukrainian side used the so-called Excalibur shells. So these are ammunition which you can use to pinpoint target an object. In addition, harm systems were used, so rockets which are actually used against enemy radar systems. In this case it was the AGM-88 which was used against Russian air defense systems and which made it possible for the Ukrainian side to form up and to attack further direction east. Now let's have a look at the time. As you can see here, the Ukrainian side conducted the operation very cleverly. The Russian side deployed not very well trained units in the area north of Isium. The Ukrainian side penetrated in that area into the first line of defense of the Russian side and attacked further. They did it in a very clever way because they were using their mobile units to attack very fast and to plant the Ukrainian flag in some of the villages. That gave the Russians the impression that they are already enveloped and they withdraw direction east. So it was able for the Ukrainian side in a very short time already to attack 50 kilometers to the east. Now comes the problem, because an army which is on the run is hard to stop. As you can see here in the next video, the Russians tried by all means to bring in reinforcements. In the video you can see Russian transport helicopters of the type Mi-26 loading and unloading heavy equipment. Those helicopters landed to the east of the city Kupiansk and formed a defense line along the Oskol River, which was the only line capable to hold the attacking Ukrainian side. The core elements of the Ukrainian sides were 2 mechanized brigades, 1 airborne assault brigades, and the assistance of territorial units and other brigades. Those elements attacked from the breakthrough point direction the east and the Oskol River. And the task was to envelop the Russian forces in Isium. Also here the problem was that if you don't break the momentum of a retreating army, the momentum will break you, and that's what happened to the Russians. You can see this very easily because a lot of heavy equipment was left by the Russians in the forming pocket, which was then captured by the Ukrainian side. It was even that kind of worse that not only managed the Ukrainians to penetrate till the Oskol River, but also to attack further direction south and Isium, and direction north. And it's even said that some Ukrainian units are already closing in into the Russian-Ukrainian border. This bridge gives you an example about the situation which was close to panic. You can see a destroyed bridge at Kupiansk, and you see Russian elements trying to cross the river into the east to go behind the new defense line along the Oskol River. The question is now what could be the outcome, and therefore I would like to go a little bit back in history and to give you some possible examples how the situation will develop. One good example is the situation in Normandy in 1944. The Operation Cobra was done by the Allies to break out of the bridgehead of Normandy and to attack into the depths of the French country. 2 armored divisions conducted this attack, which then finally led to the situation that the Germans were enveloped in the cauldron of Valais. In the cauldron of Valais, they had to left all the equipment and just tried to flee on foot to the east, which actually led to the complete breakdown of the German forces in France. Another good example could be Bagration in June 1944. The Russians attacked and broke the will of the German armed forces, and the Germans weren't able to stop them until they already reached the border of Germany. It could also be that the situation will be like the Ardennes in 1944, because as we know, there was a very powerful attack of the German side in December direction west, which then later, after a shock movement, was enveloped and broken by the Allied forces. It might be also possible that the impact of this retreat is that kind of significant that it could be that we will see something like October 1917 in Russia. So that means that the society breaks up with the leadership. But for the moment, we have no clear indicators for that. Let us have a look at the current status. As you can see, Luhansk and Crimea is to 100% under control of the Russians. The Russians also have occupied significant parts of Kherson. This number has reduced a little bit because of the offensive in Kherson. Same situation in Zaporozhye and of course in Kharkiv. In Kharkiv Oblast, the situation developed in the favor of the Ukrainian side. The Ukrainian side was able to liberate a significant amount of Kharkiv territory. When we look at the whole map of Ukraine, you can see, compared to the rest of the Russian-occupied territory, that the situation to the east of Kharkiv is indeed significant. Now let us make a look at all the last months and try to identify certain phases, because very likely we are now in a phase 3 situation. The phase 1 was the attack and the withdrawal of Russian troops from Kiev, the so-called battle for Kiev. The phase 2 was that the Russians gained again initiative and tried to attack the Donbass area, which finally led to the cauldron battle of Lysychansk. Now it looks like that we are in a new phase, in phase 3, which is marked by the offensive in Kherson, which was for the moment not so successful, and of course the offensive in Kharkiv, which had a significant impact on the liberation of the terrain east of Kharkiv. On these 2 pictures, you can see the successful Ukrainian soldiers in the southeast of Kharkiv. The next weeks and months to come will be decisive. It depends on the situation on the battlefield and how Ukraine will be able to exploit the success of the Kharkiv operation. That concludes our brief for today. You may be wondering why we haven't produced more videos in the last weeks. It's because I took command of the Honor Guard in Vienna. The Honor Guard is a battalion-size unit of the Austrian Armed Forces, which you can easily recognize by the red beret and the motto Honor and Duty. It is my will to produce further videos in the near future, but the command of the Guards unit will take my full responsibility. I would like to say thank you and see you the next time.